Ty, would you begin with the roll call, please?
Yes. Tim Andrus.
Present.
Ryan Bale.
Present.
John Byram. Kurt Campbell.
Here.
Will Conley. Debbie Farmer. Here. Charlie Flatten.
Present.
Steve Graham. Thank you. Terrell Graham. Vic Hildebrand.
Here.
Thomas Youngman.
Here.
Russell Levis.
Here.
Glenn Moore.
Here.
Scooter Mangold.
Present.
Andrew McBride. Daniel Meyer. Gary Middleton.
Here.
Travis Krusky.
Present.
Robert Puente.
Here.
Vanessa Pugh Williams.
She'll be in a few minutes.
Humberto Ramos.
Here.
Weldon Riggs.
Here.
Roland Ruiz.
Here.
Diane Savage.
Blaine Sharp, present for Diane Savage.
Darren Simmons. Mitchell Sowards.
Present.
Jonathan Stinson.
Present.
Thomas Taggart.
Here.
Ian Taylor.
Here.
Diane Wasenick. Adam Yablonsky.
Here. Diane's present virtually.
Got it. Thank you.
She's having issues with the sound.
Adam Yablonsky. Dan Yoxel.
Present.
Marty Kelly. Rusty Ray. Ronald Fiesler. Ileana Delgado. Don McGee. Elizabeth McCoy. Here. Charles Wiedenfeld. Jimmy McCool. Carl Kroll. We have a quorum.
Very fine, we'll proceed with the quorum being present. We'll move to agenda item 2, public comment. Is there anyone present in the room that would like to make public comment at this time? Is there anyone online wishing to make public comment? There being none, we'll move to agenda item 3, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of the planning group. Those minutes were sent out to the planning members prior to the meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as drafted?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any opposition to approving the minutes as drafted? There being none, we'll show the minutes approved by consensus. We'll move to agenda item 4, staff reports and communications from Texas Water Development Board.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Foss. I'm the new planning liaison from the Texas Water Development Board for Region L. I'm going to give you a quick overview of some planning agenda items coming up and some other items of note. Next slide. Yes. Okay, there we go. All right, a few quick reminders of some deadlines that are coming up very quickly. Your deadline to request revisions to your draft non-municipal water projections is July 14th, just a couple short months away. The deadline to request revisions to your draft population municipal demand projections is August 11th. The Water Development Board staff will be presenting those to the full board for adoption this fall. We're anticipating probably during one of the late September or early October board meetings. So that process will be pretty quick. March 24th seems like a long way away, but the technical memorandum, which is about the midpoint of the planning process, is due on March the 4th. We do have some revisions to the plumbing code savings projections. So Katie Dahlberg's group is hurriedly making revisions to your municipal water demand projections for both the 0.5 migration scenarios and the 1.0 migration scenarios. Some very, very smart people were taking a look at the plumbing code savings numbers and identified that there were a few issues associated with early adoption and some essentially double counting that artificially flattened the demand curve out in the 2030 and 2030, 2040 decades that would give you artificially low demand numbers. So revisions are expected as early as next week, either going to come up this next week or the following week. Interregional Planning Council, we've had 2 prior meetings. The next meeting is May 30th in Austin with a virtual option to attend. We've had probably about a 50-50 split between attendance in person and virtual attendance. So please make it out if you can, or listen online. Next slide, please. We do have some additional resource materials that have recently been made available. We've got the status of the 2021 Regional Water Planning Guidance Policy Recommendations. We've got a list of the active committees. I understand that your group is looking at possibly adding in some committees, so you might get some insight as to what some other regional planning groups are doing. And we do have some guidance and information for liaisons between other regions. We also have some guidance on consistency waivers that's very, very helpful. If you have WUGs that have some projects that are coming up that may not be in your current 2021 plan that you would like to proceed with without amending your plan, you can apply for a consistency waiver. And you can look at that guidance, or you can ping me and I'll be happy to walk you through that. We have planning group member guidance, which is great for newer members to your group. And we also have some new administrative guidance that's available for this planning cycle. Any further questions?
Thank you, Ms. Fox. We appreciate it. Welcome to the group.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. All right, I just want to comment on that. Can we send out to the liaisons to other planning groups that liaison documentation that you referred to? Give it to me.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item 5, status reports and communications related to regional water planning, including reports from the chair, regional liaisons, groundwater management area representatives, member planning groups. I'll start with a few items, and we'll discuss some of this later in the agenda. First thing I want to make you aware of was that on April 24th, planning group received a letter of resignation from Mr. Taylor, indicating that this would be his last meeting that he attends as planning group member. We'll discuss that, I think, in a little more detail later on in under agenda item 9. I think. Let's see. I won't make it brief, but let's see. Okay, that will conclude the chair report, but regarding regional liaisons, at least for Region B, I've been attending their meetings as your liaison to that group. They're very similar process and sequence that we are, reviewing demand numbers, et cetera. We'll be beginning in more detail, I suppose, our actual inter-regional communications and future meetings, and as if anything noteworthy develops within that region, I'll bring it to this group as a report. Is there anyone else that would like to make a liaison report regarding their planning group that they're attending on behalf of this planning group?
Cam, this is Diane Wasenick.
Yes.
I go to Region K meetings, and I just wanted to report, of course, they're doing the same thing we are right now at looking at population and demand and all that. And they have a committee who's doing it in extreme detail. So I'm not going to try to pass all that on to you, but if you're interested, I'll tell you more. But I will tell you that one of the projects that I reported to y'all about that was Liberty Hill trying to use an old quarry that had water flowing to it from a spring that was some distance away, that they had channeled the water to get into the quarry, and then the quarry had water coming from underneath from the groundwater, and then there were already a lot of people using that quarry, and it had not been really studied about whether even their demands could be met by the water in the quarry. Anyway, it was a request for a waiver that they were asking for from the Region K planning group. And the Region K planning group, the more they asked questions, the more they realized that they would not want to get into that as far as a waiver goes, that it would require much study and all the documentation you need for an amendment. So the Region K denied the waiver at their last meeting. And then this meeting this month, they reported that that plan has apparently been abandoned by Liberty Hill, and their consultants have led them to a spot near Georgetown that does not have a groundwater district, and so they're putting in a well field there. It turns out that little leg of the Edwards Aquifer is where they're going to be, and Barton Springs Edwards Conservation District does not have authorization from the legislature to govern or regulate that little leg where they're going to put that well field. So the drama continues, and that's about all I know about that. Other than that, there was no conflict that I think I'm supposed to be watching for between our group and theirs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Are there any GMA representatives that would like to make a report present? I'll provide you with an update on GMA 15. GMA 15 has begun its joint planning process for the next DFC development and adoption, presently entering into that process through which we obtain a technical consultant to assist the GMA. And we're also giving some consideration to TWDB's attempt to develop a new groundwater availability model that covers what we presently describe as the Central Gulf Coast Aquifer and the Southern Gulf Coast Aquifer. We anticipate that that model will be the final model either has been released or its finalization and release is imminent, with the predictive model being developed, at least being anticipated to be developed by November. That'll certainly impact our process at GMA 15, and we'll keep this committee up to date on developments regarding that. Yes, sir.
Into GMA 9 update, similar status, but we're working with our consultant, Advanced Groundwater Solutions, to finalize their scope. We have for this round, and then we've met with the modeling group as a district with the gathered pumping data that we have, trying to isolate the availability between the upper, middle, and lower Trinity. And so we're gonna work that into the new Southern Trinity GAN model that's being prepared. And then we meet again on July 25th in Bernie, if anybody's interested. That's pretty much it. And just I think the manager of the present GM and I just asked that people have comments, because the comment period is kind of late in the process, that they can go ahead and provide those earlier if needed.
Thank you. Anyone else?
GMA 7 has a meeting scheduled for the middle of next month to start our process. We've already hired our consultant.
Very fine. Okay, and then finally, under this agenda item, member reports. Mr. Foreman, I think you want to make some comments.
Sure. For those who don't remember me, it's been a year since the pandemic happened, and have not had a chance to give you all a briefing. I'm the program manager for the Edwards Habitat Conservation Plan. The EHCP has been busy as of the past couple of years. We've now started a permit renewal process. Our current 15-year permit will expire in March of 2028. And we've started a permit renewal process as of about a year, just a little over a year ago. And we're now currently in the middle of reviewing the covered species and covered activities. We're basically working through the sections of the HCP that exist, and what works is continuing to stay in the document. Things that might be improved are being improved, and if there are things that didn't work, we're working to remove those. So it'll be a permanent renewal. It won't be a brand new HCP. That there was too much hard work put in the early years to necessarily start over. And it's been a functioning and it's a well-functioning and a successful program at this point. So, as I mentioned, we're in the middle of that process. At the end of that process, before we will send over a draft HCP to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, an application will be the end of 2025. So we've still got about 2.5 years before that will actually happen. Lots of input's going to be given. Lots of stakeholder meetings are going to be happening. If you want to find out more about the process and where we are, you can go to ehcprenewal.org. That's our website, and you can easily link up there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My information is on the EAA website. Also, you can reach out to Roland, and he can get you in touch with me if there were any questions about the permit and where we are. So anyway, I just wanted to pass that along and give you a status update with where we are, and if you have any questions, you can
Mr. Chairman, just I don't have questions about that, but as your host, we relate with coffee and pastries. They are here, so welcome yourself.
Okay, well, thank you so much for providing that. And We're gonna take 5 minutes, actually. So we're gonna take 5 minutes, pause here, come back, get going again, I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee. I hope everyone else has the same.
That's a first. And then it's another meeting.
Again, I don't.
Great, thanks.
So it's now in 15, but it's like.
I would suggest any.
Well. There you go. We have a license. But.
I'll just wait for that.
No, not. Yeah, well, I'm not sure.
Well, let's, give us some problem, Mike. Yes, put your matter to bed.
Right.
No, it's a very good. So, we got to know where.
Right. Definitely, yeah.
Of my period, otherwise. Someone may be on.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring some outreach. I just had to stick that.
You'll do that.
Yes.
If nothing else, if nothing else.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's right. Okay, everyone, thanks for allowing us to pause for a few minutes and deal with our coffee needs. We'll pick up, were there any other members that wish to make a report or any comments under agenda item 5? Okay, there being none, we'll move to agenda item 6. Presentation by technical consultant regarding schedule, progress, and population of municipal water demand.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jamie Burke with Black and Beach. Can y'all hear me okay? I know the microphone's not working. All right. I'm sorry that Lauren Gonzalez cannot be with us today, but I'm filling in to go over the technical consultant presentation with you all. As Tim mentioned, we're going to go over a schedule and progress update first. Then we'll get into some details about the population and municipal water demand projections and their supporting data. So next slide, please. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so here we have our conceptual schedule for the entire planning cycle from 2021 out to 2025. you can see we're about a year and a half into the process. And we have quite a bit of work to do over the next couple of years before the initially prepared plan is due. We've been working on population and water demand projections so far. We're gonna start getting into water availability and water supplies later this year, including surface water modeling. And we're starting to identify some of the potentially infeasible strategies from the 2021 plan, which is a new task. And I'll get into more detail on that in a little bit, but just kind of identifying where we've been and then where we're going over the next couple of years. We've got a lot of work to do on water availability and supplies, then getting into the water management strategies. That's going to be the bulk of the work probably next year. Kind of before we get to that, we do have our first deliverable, the technical memorandum, that's due March 4th, 2024. It's a little less than a year from now. And then, as I mentioned, the initially prepared plan will be due a year after that, March 3rd, 2025, with the final plan due October 20th of 2025. So this is what we're working towards. We're in the middle of the process. We have a lot more work to do though. If we go to the next slide, we'll get into some of the 2023 details for this year. So as I mentioned, we've been working on non-municipal demands projections. Those are due to the board July 14th, 2023. This meeting here is essentially our last opportunity as a planning group to approve any final revisions that we want to submit to the board before that deadline. We've also started working on the population and municipal demand projections. Those came out in January from the Water Development Board, and we have until August 11th to submit any revisions to the Water Development Board on those. And then later this year, we'll start getting into that water supply and availability. We'll need to start talking about our assumptions for our hydrologic variance, for the surface water modeling, and then start running that so we have that information in time for the technical memorandum. And then we'll talk also about the identification of infeasible water management strategies. I have a little bit more information on that in a couple minutes, so I'll skip over that. But then there's a few other tasks that we're going to try to start before the end of the year, just to kind of get those going. And as always, we've got our public participation task 10, that goes all the way through with all of our public meetings and public outreach. Any questions on that?
I have a question regarding the schedule.
Okay.
So we will have, how many meetings will we have, future meetings to deal with making recommendations for changes to municipal agreements?
Really just the one.
Okay.
So we're going to try to do all of the work through the population and water demand work group, and then bring all of the revisions to you in early August.
But the August meeting, you'd anticipate us having,
Correct.
Considering
Yes.
potential approval of things.
Yeah, if the planning group feels we need to have an interim meeting to go over the progress that we've made, we can certainly do that. But that would be up to you all.
Well, the planning group, any of the members can participate in the committees.
In the work group, correct.
Right.
Yes, so anyone is able to attend those meetings and participate that way. Next slide, please.
Just a moment. One more thing. I failed to make an announcement. I got confused. Jamie, thank you for pausing. I wanted to let the group know, I was informed recently that Ms. Gonzalez will be stepping away from her role leading this group as a technical consultant lead for an interim period of time. And until that time, Jamie Burke would be filling in as her in that role until such time that Lauren returns. So I wanted everyone to be aware of that. We appreciate receiving the notice of that in advance. And, if any of the membership have any questions or comments about that, feel free to come to me and we can discuss that. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, thank you.
We're very glad to have you here,
Oh.
helping us. We know we're incapable.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Okay, so one of the data releases that the board provided to us recently is the draft population and municipal demand projections. I think those came out in late January, but we did not have time to talk about them at the February planning group meeting. So we're kind of just getting into that now with you all. So here is a link and a QR code to the information on the TWPG's website. They have a lovely dashboard where you can look at some of the information in more detail if you want. One thing to note is Michelle mentioned that the Water Development Board is currently revising those plumbing code savings, which does affect the municipal demands as well. So the numbers, if you go to this link right now, the numbers are going to change slightly after mid-May. So just something to be aware of, but we wanted to provide that link to you all at this time. Next slide, please. Okay, so moving on just to some of our progress update information, some of our completed efforts related to outreach. We did hold a webinar on March 9th for stakeholders. We introduced them to the regional water planning process and how they would be invited to provide input during the planning cycle. We did record that webinar, and so if anyone is interested in seeing it, we can provide you a link. In addition, as we've been having communication with some of the municipal WUGs related to the population and municipal demand projections, we have provided that link to them. So if they are interested, they can go and review that. And it's providing input on during all phases of the cycle, not just population and municipal demand. It's related to supplies and water management strategies and projects and such. The other thing that we've been working on is that we sent surveys and email communications out to 136 municipal WUGs to get their feedback on the population and municipal demand data. So far, and this actually, I'm going to correct this because we did receive a couple more responses since these slides were completed, but so we've received 63 responses from unique WUGs to date, which does account for approximately 83% of all of the 2030 regional water demand. So while it's not a huge number of WUGs, it is a fairly large percentage of the water demand in the region. 30 of those respondents have requested to revise their projections, and we're going to go over this in a lot more detail in the population and municipal demand projection agenda item. So I won't go into too much more detail right now unless anyone has some specific questions. But that's something that we've been working on, and we've kind of completed the survey process. We're still working on the kind of back and forth communication with the WUGs. With regards to the population and water demands work group, we've met with them a couple of times and reviewed some updated information on steam electric demands and manufacturing demands, and worked with them to develop a recommendation to bring to you all today related to some additional revisions to the non-municipal demands for submittal to the Water Development Board. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay, next slide, please. So some information on just some of our ongoing efforts. We're currently communicating back and forth with many of the WUGs related to their survey responses and trying to get more information from them related to their revision requests. We're continuing to meet with the Population Water Demands Work Group. We will be planning to meet with them in May, June, and July as needed to address the population and municipal demand revisions. We're currently planning a meeting in May, so we're hoping to make that happen so that we can kind of get started in that, figuring out which revisions can happen and how they all fit together. Again, I'll talk a little more about that in the later agenda item. Another thing we're doing is we've begun some interregional coordination efforts. We have been scheduling regular calls with Region K, their consultant team, specifically to talk about many of the shared WUGs in kind of the Hayes County, Caldwell County area. We plan, so far we've been talking about population and demands, kind of as the cycle goes forward, we'll talk about water supplies and then water management strategies for those shared floods and kind of that overall area. We are also connecting with regions G, N, and P as needed. Some of those are related to population and municipal demand projections. Some of those might only be related to water management strategies or water supplies. So kind of on an as-needed basis. And then we're beginning review of the 2021 plan water management strategy data to determine if any of those may be infeasible. This is a new task this cycle from the Water Development Board. I'll talk a little bit more about it on the next slide, but as we review this information for these strategies, we're going to need to reach out to the WUDs and project sponsors to, in some cases, get more information about where they are in the process or in the implementation process for their strategies and projects. So next slide, please. So just, we haven't talked a lot about infeasible strategies. I know in the planning process, we talk about potentially feasible strategies, but not so much infeasible strategies. And specifically in this task where we're required to perform some work, we're looking at the board wants us to take a look at the 2021 plan, the strategies and projects listed in that plan, and determine, really for those in the near term, like 2020 strategies, or the strategies that have supplies coming online by 2020, and in some cases 2030, have the project sponsors taken action to actually implement those strategies? Are they providing supplies currently in the case of the 2020 strategies? In theory, those strategies should be providing supplies right now. If they're not, has there been some action to move those projects along? And if not, maybe those should be considered infeasible for 2020, and we would need to amend the 2021 plan to either remove that strategy from the plan or potentially just move that strategy back a decade. Maybe 2030 is a more feasible date. So that's something that we're required to look at. They want us to focus on strategies that require a permit or construction. That's where our focus would be. And in some cases, most of them are related to the near term, 2020, maybe 2030, depending on the project. There are some potentially bigger projects, like major reservoirs, maybe some ASR projects or seawater desal, that could require years and years of permitting. So we need to look at those projects as well, see what decade they're anticipated to come online, and then determine if there's been sufficient action by the project sponsor to really make that a feasible strategy. And if not, again, we're going to need to amend the 2021 plan to make those adjustments. So that's what that task is really about, and that's something that we need to do this year. It needs to be, I don't remember if it needs to be incorporated in the technical memorandum. Yes. So we need to have it done by March of 2024, and then I believe by June, if we do need to amend the 2021 plan, that needs to be done by June of 2024. So it's kind of an extra exercise that we will be including along with our regular planning efforts. Any questions on that?
I have a recollection that there was a message sent out to all planning group members with a series of attachments
Yes.
identifying those strategies that would require a review.
Yes, correct.
So all of you received that, I think it was in January. I can't recall that it was a very lengthy list, but if you're interested in that matter, you have some of that information available to you.
Yeah, and we'll be bringing that to you kind of as we go through it and figure out, if there's potential changes we need to make.
Do you have to take an affirmative vote to amend the existing water plan, or just have that in mind to incorporate in this existing planning cycle? It seems a little additional to go back and do something that, if it's deemed infeasible, is probably not gonna be seeking SWIFT funding in the first place during this planning cycle, so why is it worth our time?
That's a really good question.
I mean, it seems to just plan more for planning's sake when.
I think the idea is to encourage the planning groups going forward not to have that issue again. Because we would have to do the same thing next cycle.
Right.
So.
Just feels like it's teed up now. I mean, we're about to enter into the water management strategy evaluation
And it will, and so, yeah,
incorporation,
so anything we determine based on this analysis, we should bring over
Yeah.
as we're looking at the 2026 plan. That's right.
Excuse me, one more, labor point too early, but any of those strategies that are identified as being infeasible are required to amend previous plan to remove them from the previous plan.
It is a requirement.
My understanding.
Well, either to remove them or to push them back a decade or
But
two.
either way, amendment to the plan.
It's an amendment, it's, yes,
Procedurally.
that has to be adopted by the planning group.
I'm still not seeking funding for it if it's infeasible. Just gonna have another action item. Let's not have a committee about it. Sorry, thank you.
No, thank you, thank you. Okay, great, so next slide. I think that was, okay, so that was all that I had on the schedule and progress update. All right with you all, we can move on to 6B, which is a presentation on the population and municipal water demand projections and spring data. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So this is, so you all maybe remember last year we got a draft list of municipal WUGs from the Water Development Board that we needed to review, determine if any changes were needed, and submit those back to the Water Development Board. And so this is just a reminder of some of the changed and new municipal WUGs that we have this cycle. The two up at the top in blue, those were name changes provided to us by the Water Development Board. The planning group is fine with those. Those next, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 6 in green, those were brand new WUGs given to us by the Water Development Board. So once we reviewed them, that one at the bottom, Rancho del Lago, we determined was in Blanco County only, which is Region K, so it should not be in Region L. So we did request its removal from the Region L list, which the board did. And then that one at the bottom, that blue one, we determined that the Maxwell WSC WUG changed its name to Maxwell SUD. And so we requested that name change. And that was also approved by the board. So just to, if when we're talking about municipal WUGs and you see a new name that you're not familiar with, it may be a brand new WUG this cycle. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is just our list of data releases from the Water Development Board and the due dates for when revisions have to be made. We are just finishing up these non-municipal demand projections. We'll get that submittal to the board before July 14th. And then we're currently working on the population and municipal water demand projections, along with the historical WUG data and draft baseline GPCP data, which are due in August.
Jamie, I have a question. With regards to this slide and the previous slide, and maybe it's for the Water Development Board. So you being the chair of the population and water demand work group, certainly want to adhere to these deadlines. But going back to the WUG list of changes, on February 3rd, Canyon Lake Water Supply changed its name to Texas Water Company. And that was this year. And so the WUG list was due on July 29, 2022. So the question we get to the Water Development Board is, events like this, or hopefully with no other events, but other events occur after the deadline, what is the recourse? How do amend or how do we change if we wish to change? For instance, the new name of Canyon Lake Water Supply. And for some of you who may not recall, Canyon Lake Water Supply along with NBU at the last plan requested more demand to come out of town. So the name did change, but it was after this deadline. So is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the name change at this point in the cycle, but we can double check that for you. Then in terms of additional revisions, like after this August 11th deadline, there is a process for that. But once the TWPG board adopts those projections, those revisions will have to be paid for. They can't be paid for with the planning contract funds. So there is for the I guess, what we're requesting that revision. So we do coordinate with TDA, TZQ on kind of these projections that we're taking to our board. So it's quite an involved process. But there's
And I would add that we had a similar situation in another region, and Kitty Dahlberg at the Water Development Board said it was basically too late to change the name. So we can asterisk, we can, you know.
We'll adhere to the deadlines.
But we can ask, we can ask again in maybe a slightly different situation. So. Okay, next slide, please. So the planning groups receive these draft population and municipal demand projections from the Water Development Board. The Water Development Board staff develops the projections from the state demographer's data. Once the planning groups receive the projections, they're tasked with reviewing them and then providing any requested revisions back to the board for August 11th. The planning groups, as part of that review process, send those projections out to the municipal WUGs and ask them to review them and provide any feedback back to us so that we can make any potential revisions to those before the deadline. So the Water Development Board does require some specific documentation if you're looking to make a change to either your population or your GPCD or your water demands projections. And we pulled that information from the Exhibit C guidelines that the Water Development Board provides. We did send that out to the municipal WUGs that did mention they wanted to request revisions, so they had that information about what sort of documentation we were looking for. The last 5 pages of your agenda packet, I believe, have that handout in it that we sent out to the municipal WUGs. So if you were curious about what kind of supporting documentation the board is looking for, that should be in your agenda packet. And then, so, one of the challenges when we're talking about population numbers is that oftentimes municipal WUGs want to see increases. They think they're growing faster than the numbers are showing. There's not a ton that are generally wanting decreases. And so because we have regional and sometimes county limits on those population totals, it can be a little challenging sometimes to try to meet the requests of some of these municipal WUGs. And so that's part of the reason we're trying to have as much time as possible before August 11th to kind of review all of the data that we're getting from the WUGs and see what our options are. But yeah, generally regional population totals are not allowed to change. So that's kind of one of the rules that we work under. Next slide, please. So the information that is provided to the regional water planning groups with the draft projections includes water user group and county level population projections based on the Texas Demographic Center's full 1.0 migration scenario. The Water Development Board also provides county level population projections based on the half migration scenario. And they've given us an option to look at both, determine if the half migration scenario might be more appropriate for a particular county for some reason. And if so, if we think that that's the case, we are allowed to request to the Water Development Board to provide, calculate and provide us those WUG level population projections for that half migration scenario. But those are not initially provided to us. We would have to request that additional information. The baseline GPCD numbers are provided to us, as well as the plumbing code savings projections. We mentioned that those numbers are gonna be, are currently being revised a bit, and so we'll see how those affect the municipal demand projections. But so we receive all of that data from the Water Development Board as part of this review process, as part of this feedback process. So, next slide, please. So the 2026 draft projections are derived from the 2020 US census. Previous cycles, I think, so 2 cycles ago, it used the 2010 census. The last cycle, pretty close to the 2010 census, it moved things around within, from city-based to utility-based, I think. But this cycle, we're starting with the 2020 census, which could be good, could be bad. We're running into some issues potentially already based on the 2020 census, but that's something that we're definitely gonna coordinate on with the population and water demand work group. The migration rate that the Texas Demographic Center used to develop those county level projections looked at the migration rate between 2010 and 2020 and used that same rate to project out that future growth. Then the Water Development Board develops the WUG level population projections and the water demand projections using that same 1.0 migration scenario. And one thing to note this cycle that's new is in previous cycles, if a county's population was projected to decrease over time, the Water Development Board tended to keep it flat. You didn't see populations declining in regional water planning. This cycle, that's not the case. So if a county is projected to decrease in population, we are going to see that. And so that's been really interesting as well. Okay, next slide. Yeah, that's really fine. So this is the information, the county population information by scenario. Over on the left is the 1.0 migration scenario for 2030 out to 2080. And then on the right is the half migration scenario for 2030 out to 2080. The rows that are highlighted in blue are counties where the half migration scenario results in higher population numbers than the 1.0 migration scenario. This is something that we're going to be looking at with the population and water demand work group in more detail based on the feedback that we get from the municipal WUGs related to the population projections to see if there's any cases where we think the half migration scenario could be more appropriate. So that's something that we're focused on in the next couple months as far as looking at that information. Next slide, please. So our revision process that we're starting to go through, we have sent the surveys out to the municipal WUGs. We did that in early March. We sent an email communication with a survey link and just it provided information about regional water planning, provided information about state water planning, the TWPG, put some links to the Region L website, put some links to the TWPB website if they wanted more information. Tried to make it like really, really nice. Wanted to encourage everyone to like get back with us. We did send some reminders following that early March send out March 22nd, April 4th, and then finally April 28th. We then met with the population and water demand work group on March 29th to start talking about population and municipal demand projections. We hadn't received a ton of feedback at that point, but we did start talking with them about kind of an overview of what we've seen so far. As well, during that meeting, we heard a presentation from the Water Development Board on the plumbing code savings. Again, those are now being revised, so we'll have new information on those, I think by mid-May, along with new municipal demand projections. And during that meeting, the work group decided that we should wait to hear from the WUDs before determining whether a certain migration scenario might be more appropriate for a particular county. Since that meeting, we've been following up with the WUDs that have indicated that they want to make changes, and we're working on identifying those changes and preparing information and documentation to provide to the population and water demand work group in order to develop a recommendation for the planning group. Next slide, please. So as far as our schedule of how we're trying to accomplish all of this, the surveys originally asked for a response by April 7th. After April 7th, we didn't send out more regular reminders to fill out the survey, but we did accept survey responses through May 1st. And we did send out one final email request on April 28th, just letting them know that we really wanted their participation. The planning group wanted to know that they had been able to review and provide feedback on their projections, and that after May 1st, if they did request revisions, if they didn't get to us until after May 1st, there was a chance we may not be able to work with them, just timing wise. And so we did get several more responses after that email, but again, we're at 63 total, I think, for today. So for those that did say they want revisions, we've been having some back and forth communications. We sent them an initial response email thanking them for their survey response, telling them, here's the criteria for adjustment. Let us know what revisions you're looking for, specifically, and then what kind of supporting documentation do you have to support that. And if you have questions and want to get on a call with us, just let us know and we can make that happen. So we have had some phone calls with folks. We've set up meetings. We've done some just through email communication, but we've had some back and forth. Most of the folks that have responded that they want a revision have been in communication with us. I think there's a couple that we sent out that information, we sent a reminder, we still haven't heard anything, so we're still working on those. But we'd like to try to have all of the data before we start moving the puzzle pieces around. Because once we start doing that, if we know who within a county wants to make changes, that makes it easier to see whether we can actually make those changes. If we figured it out and then someone comes in late to the game, it's like, well, I want to change too. Then we have to kind of start all over for that county. So that was our goal, to try to get all of the data up front. But we are planning to spend May, June, and July coordinating with the WUDs, working with the Population Water Management Group, and working with the TWPG staff to develop any recommended revisions that we will bring to you all in early August. Next slide, please. Okay, and here is a list of the WUDs that have responded to our survey so far. There's a couple missing. I can mention those in a minute, but so the ones on the left are the WUDs that have requested revisions. There's 30 of those. The ones on the right, the WUD responded to the survey indicating that the TWDB provided projections appear reasonable and that they did not request any changes. And there were 26 of those. And then down at the bottom, we did get a few that initially responded to the survey that they wanted to request revisions. But then after some additional consideration, after a little bit of communication with them, they let us know that actually, no, we changed our mind, we think they're okay. And so those ones at the bottom had that situation. I think we had a couple more that said that their projections appeared reasonable, should be added onto the right. That was Point Comfort and Three Oaks Water Supply Corporation. So we actually have a The Oaks Water Supply Corporation and a Three Oaks Water Supply Corporation in our region. So those should be added onto that right side. Any questions on that?
I've got a comment with regards to the next meeting, I guess for this work group. Was it May 19th or is on the date yet?
Yes, so most members of the work group responded that May 19th works for them, and it'll most likely be at 10 in the morning.
Just FYI for everyone. Of course, everyone's invited.
At the San Antonio River Authority.
Yes.
Under this group of 26 that said their projections appear reasonable, there's a Karnes County other. What does that mean?
So that was the Karnes County judge. So all of the county other populations, which is like the rural areas of the county that aren't officially a municipal WUG. They lump kind of everyone else under this WUG that's called county other. And so those we generally send to the county judge. And so in this case, the county judge responded to our survey and said that they look reasonable.
Work group's meeting at San Antonio River Road, correct?
Yes.
Gunther Road, hold on.
Yes, 100 East Bedford. 10 a.m.
Any other questions?
Next slide. I think that one's
No,
it.
proceed.
Yeah, that was it for that agenda item.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item 7. Please proceed.
Okay, so we do have an item for some discussion and appropriate action regarding the recommendation for feedback to TWDB on non-municipal water demands data. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you all just a summary of where we've been with the population water demands work group with regards to the non-municipal demand review activities. So we kind of started a year ago, April 2022, with a meeting where we went through an overview of all of the water use, the non-municipal water use categories. And then in November through January, we had more detailed individual meetings to look at each water use category with the exception of mining, to dive deeper into those details and look at potential revisions for each of those categories. So we did that in November through January, and we developed a recommendation to bring to the planning group at the February 2nd, 2023 planning group meeting. And so at that meeting, a recommendation was made, the planning group approved it. Since that time, we've received some updated information related to steam electric demands in Bexar County and Guadalupe County, as well as some manufacturing demands in Guadalupe County. And so we've had a couple of additional population water demand work group meetings to review and revisit that information and develop an additional recommendation to bring to you all today. So that's where kind of where we've been and where we are right now. Next slide, please. So first we'll start with the steam electric demands. Next slide, please. So for Bexar County and Guadalupe County, we received updated information from CPS Energy. Specifically for Bexar County, CPS Energy discovered that their reported water use survey numbers were too high for 2015 through 2020. What they told us was the numbers reported to the Water Development Board were almost double what they thought they should be. And so taking that into consideration, that resulted in the highest use in the last 10 years being in 2011. And that number was 52,293 acre feet per year. So based on that, CPS Energy requested to use the 52,293 acre feet per year as the projected demand for 2030 through 2080. And then for Guadalupe County, There, just to give you some background, there was an amendment request last cycle to revise the steam electric demands for Guadalupe County from 7,070 acre feet up to 9,405 acre feet per year. And that was based on a request from CPS Energy. Just to clarify, there are two facilities in Guadalupe County. There's a CPS Energy facility and there's a Calpine facility. Calpine this cycle has not requested any revisions. CPS Energy mentioned that they felt like a drought year, they would be using 5,500 acre feet per year for their Rio Nogales facility, based on a study that was done by HDR. This is similar information to what they provided last cycle, which increases the demands to 9,405 acre feet per year. So they requested that we increase the demands this cycle for Guadalupe County to 9,405 acre feet per year. Any questions on that? Okay. Next slide, please. So the recommendation from the Population and Water Demand Work Group is for Steam Electric in Bexar County to decrease the draft projections from 76,539 acre feet per year to reflect the 2011 highest water use of 52,293 acre feet per year across all decades. And then for Guadalupe County to revise the draft projections to increase the demand from 7,008 acre feet per year to 9,405 acre feet per year across all decades. And this would be the similar demand as last cycle.
Thank you. Is there any discussion regarding the map? Is there a motion to adopt and approve the recommended changes? The middle of those TWDB?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Excuse me. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, is there any opposition to the motion? There being none, I will show the motion passed by consensus.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the manufacturing demands. Next slide, please. So this one is specific to Guadalupe County, and just to give you an update, at the February Regional meeting, we did make a revision to manufacturing in Guadalupe County. So this is going to be a revision to that revision, just to give you that information up front. So what happened was that Seguin discovered that the Niagara Bottling Company reported water use survey numbers were too low for 2018 and 2019. And so they sent us some updated numbers that were better representative of the company's consumptive water use. And that information resulted in a new highest use for Guadalupe County in 2018 of 3,200 acre feet per year. And just to clarify that, at the last, so the last revision that was made at the February meeting was a decrease to the draft projections to subtract the water use of the OJR reclamation plant. As that is a wastewater treatment plant, is not technically a manufacturing facility, should not have been included in the manufacturing water use category. So this 3,200 acre feet per year takes into consideration the subtraction of the OJR reclamation plant and then the addition of the Niagara Bottling Company water use. And so based on that, the recommendation for the adjustment by the Population Water Demand Work Group was to increase the 2026 draft water demand projections for Guadalupe County to subtract OJR reclamation and add Niagara water use, which results in a 2030 demand of 3,526 acre feet per year, increasing up to 4,229 acre feet per year in 2080. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Next slide, please. And so this is the recommendation from the Population and Water Demand Work Group, is to increase the draft projections to subtract the OJR reclamation plant and add the Niagara bottling company water use, resulting in the demand shown in the table.
Can you give me an idea of roughly the magnitude of the change we're talking about from what we had? From what we're changing from, if we're changing to these numbers,
So
about where were they?
we were at about, so the draft numbers were around 3,200 in 2030. We dropped them down, I want to say about 800 acre feet to take away the OJR reclamation plant, and then brought them up maybe another 1,100. So I think we're about 400 acre feet increase from the draft projections that the board provided.
Any other questions or comments? There being none, is there a motion to adopt the recommendation?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Is there any opposition to the motion? There being none, we'll show that the motion passed by consensus.
And the next slide I have is just a summary of everything. So I'm done. Unless there's any other questions.
Very fine, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Yes. Yes, please.
I've just received some information, the Water Development Board has, completed all of their MAC models. They apparently finished those last night. And, they are currently reviewing, irrigation demands to see if those new MAC models are impacting irrigation demands in, groundwater constrained irrigation areas. So there may be an upcoming change to your irrigation demands that you'll see in the next couple of weeks. So that is, timely for your upcoming work group meeting and,
The upcoming work group meeting, May 19th. Okay, very fine, thank you. Okay, is there any additional discussion or comments under agenda item 7? Okay. Move to agenda item 8. I'm not aware of anyone making requests for additional subcommittees of any sort. Right? Yes? No? No, okay. Just checking, I thought I heard you ask for that. At the next meeting, we'll try to give you an update on all of the committees, so you understand where they're at and what's come to those subcommittees. We'll move on to agenda item 9, discussion and appropriate action regarding filling vacancies. So we now have vacancy on the planning group, caused by the resignation, Mr. Taylor. We have, we previously dealt with this matter by giving San Antonio River Authority the authorization to proceed with the process to fill vacancies on an ongoing basis. I don't think it requires any action by the committee for that to occur. So if you would, please proceed with that process to proceed nominations and so on. If necessary, the executive committee will, if we can, if the timing works, if we can conclude it before the next meeting, all the better. And if necessary, we'll convene a meeting of the executive committee with nominees. So those of you that may know someone that's interested in serving, please make them aware of it, this vacancy, and give them an opportunity to be nominated. Is there any discussion or comments to be made under this agenda item?
Currently, we only have one vacancy, right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
On that, but aren't there seats that are, their term has expired? And vacancy, I believe 2023 had county expire, and I thought another one, that those folks would either need to.
Okay, that's a good point. If you would, review the terms of the various, follow the planning group members and any of those that are set to expire at the time of appropriate. Please proceed with the nomination process. Reach out.
And I may be off and I'm looking at Steven to phone a friend over there, but
So all members that have an expiration of their term for 2023, we will address that at the end of this year. And
at the end of this year.
yes,
Okay.
before 2020.
So the new ones will be seated in 24, not August.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure, there may be another vacancy. Diane Savage, GMA 13 representative, was also on our board, and she is not seeking re-election. Saturday's election is when our board members are. I'm not completely sure what her intent is, but I believe she will be wanting to resign. I'll have to.
So the GMA positions are filled by those GMAs electing an individual to serve in that role. So if you'd address that through your GMA, that would be, I think, appropriate, and then notify planning group of the outcome of that. May have some other membership change in that. Okay, any other discussion regarding filling existing vacancies? Okay. Being none, we'll move. Anything else to discuss? Agenda item 10, schedule and potential agenda items for the next meeting. Next meeting is scheduled for August 3rd at 9:30 a.m. I presume. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the schedule or agenda items for the next meeting? Of course, if you have any matters that come up in the interim, contact Kai or myself and deal with that in terms of if there's a need for an agenda item. So.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Could we have something, it's in August, correct?
Yes, sir.
That would be after the session, after the veto period, someone to tell us what happened with the issues.
Legislative session update? Yes, we can try it out. We'll place that on the agenda. Any other discussion under this agenda item?
The vacancy, what category was that? Was it utilities or
Me?
Yes.
Municipalities.
municipality?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. If you want to say something real quick,
Please.
I'm not leaving because I don't like y'all. I'm retired from the office utilities. I go and retire from public service and do something else. So I just wanted to tell y'all how much I appreciate being a part of your group and for y'all welcoming me the way that y'all have. When I first got into public service, I've always worked with electric and water utilities. I was briefly tell you a quick story. I was working for LCRA building a power transmission line. I was sitting in offices in Bandera with Bandera Electric Cooperative and CPS Energy, and three of us were trying to figure out how to make this project work and keep everybody empowered and the whole thing. And it was it just felt really good, you know, one of those things you have at work where it's kind of the intersection of your interests and your skills and your background all coming together. And I thought, man, this is really neat to be in public service and working with different entities to serve this many people. And I bring that story up because there have been a few other times I've had an opportunity to do that in my career. And this planning, this regional group is one of them. And so I was on a panel when I was first appointed CEO, and it was about water, and some angry person asked me, "Why can't you water Burberry get along?" And I said, "Well, I don't think there's anybody we're not getting along with, you know." And I understood the question. You know, on the electric side of our business, we fight it out with the legislature, but on water, you just do it wherever you run into people, you know. And I've never had that experience in regional. I've appreciated every relationship that Indy's had, and I hope that we come across as a good partner with y'all as well. So again, I just want to thank y'all for welcoming me to this group and giving me the opportunity to serve.
Thank you for your comments. Wish you well in your retirement, future endeavors, and hope to see you again perhaps someday here in the room.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move to agenda item 11. Is there anyone present or online that would like to make public comment at this time? So with that, we'll move to agenda item 12. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second,
Second.
we're adjourned. Thank you.